What people don't realize is we have a really big problem, and that's we have an orphan crisis. I remember going home that night and thinking, I want to fix that.
When she said open to adoption, I thought that's like, yeah, it's something I'd be willing to consider. She meant like signed, sealed, delivered. That's what we're doing. And a lot of times people, when they have conversations about adoption, it's focused around being able to provide a life for him. And that's a big part of what we want to do. But I cannot fully articulate the benefits to the parents as well.
Dear young married couple. Couples often say, we've thought about adoption, but it feels impossible.
In today's episode, Hunter and Brookelyn Haley share their story and show you why it's not.
From fears and finances to open doors and unexpected joy, they walk us through how they said yes to one of the most sacred callings a couple can embrace.
We've had the honor of hosting them twice before, so back in 2021 to talk about God's plan for your money, and in 2024 to explore how to start a business together. We deeply respect them, not just as fellow entrepreneurs and ministers doing big things for Jesus, but also as dear friends.
Yes, Hunter holds a degree in marketing management and Brookelyn has a degree in psychology, and together they run a thriving business. They bring wisdom, faith, and practical insight that we know will bless you.
As James 1:27 says, pure and undefiled religion before God is this, to care for the orphans and the widows in their distress. This episode will help you explore what that might look like in your story.
So let's dive in.
Hunter and Brookelyn Haley, it's so good to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys again.
Yeah, welcome back to the podcast. You guys have poured into our audience over the years, and you've poured into us. We're thankful for your friendship. We have memories of going backpacking with you guys into the forest and brainstorming and dreaming together on ministry and business. And we're just so thankful for you guys and what you guys do for the kingdom, but specifically how it's impacted us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for all that you do.
Aw.
Absolutely.
So you guys have adopted a cute little kiddo named Winston, and we want to talk about that journey. But let's back up. I mean, most people at some point in their childhood, teenhood, or adulthood think about adopting. And I think it's such a biblical thing to do. And so I think it crosses most people's minds, but most people end up not adopting. Talk about like where that story began. Was it one of you or both of you? Was it in childhood? So jump in wherever it makes sense.
Okay. Well, it started with me.
Okay.
So when I was about 12 or 13 years old, we actually had a missionary from Japan come to our church. It was he and his son. And I remember after church that night, we were sitting there eating dinner, and they were talking about how technologically advanced Japan was and how progressive it was. And I remember his son, who was about my age, said, you know, what's so incredible is there's so many good things we can say about Japan, but what people don't realize is we have a really big problem, and that's we have an orphan crisis. And there are so many children who don't have families. And they began to talk about it. I remember going home that night and thinking, I want to fix that. And at that time, I went to my parents and I asked them to adopt a child. And at that point, our family was not in a position where we could. So I just looked at my parents one day and I said, that's okay. One day I will adopt my Asian child. And I knew I wanted to adopt from Asia. I didn't really know which country, but I knew for sure I wanted to adopt from Asia. And so I just kind of kept that tucked away in my heart. And as I got older, it never went away. So when we met, I brought up the topic of adoption.
I want to hear that topic. So, by the way, if you marry me.
It was kind of a contingency.
That's basically what
marriage,
it was.
yeah.
I just told him, like, I know I'm going to adopt one day. And if you're not open to adoption, then we're not supposed to be together, because I know this is something I'm supposed to do.
And when she said open to adoption, I thought that's like, yeah, it's something I'd be willing to consider. She meant like signed, sealed, delivered, like guaranteed. That's what we're doing. And so it just took me for a while to like fully understand exactly what she meant there.
Yeah, so that was a non-negotiable. How did you guys get to that conclusion? I mean, did it happen pretty quickly while you were dating, or did it happen once you were serious about to get married?
I was pretty committed to her, and so like I was like, if this is part of it, then that's part of it as well. But the thing is, it wasn't that I was ever opposed to it. I just had never been exposed to it very much. Yeah. And without telling too much of other people's story, the only experiences that I had close in my family with adoption were not necessarily the most ideal. And so I was thinking kind of worst case scenarios. And so a lot of people actually listening to this probably have no idea, but my mom had an adopted brother. And like, I don't know that many people know about that. We haven't talked about it a whole lot. He ended up taking his own life later in life and stuff like that. And so there was some aspects of it that coming from that perspective, I saw that I was like, okay, I understand that there's a need, but I also understand the hurt, the possibility of what can happen. And so there was an element of that I was like, okay, I'm cautious, but I'm open to it. I know it's important. But I think working through it together, part of that process was being able to be exposed to other stories, because there's a friend of ours and a cousin of hers and ours that actually adopted, and they had a beautiful story. And so I was like, okay, that there is a possibility that this can work out amazingly. And so it was a little bit of a process for me emotionally. I was open to it, I would say, probably from the beginning. But it was just kind of working through, okay, now that we're actually looking into this, like now that we're getting serious, like what are all the ramifications? And she thinks through a lot of that way better and way more advanced than I do. I kind of like when it hits, I'm like, okay, now I got to figure this out.
Well, I'm an internal processor. And so before I ever bring it up to him, I've thought through all the details, and then I have a tendency to just throw it on him.
Yeah, that's not fair.
I know it's probably not fair.
She's like, I have all my rebuttals ready. Go.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, there's just like,
She's like, you lose.
exactly. I was like, I guess we do it. And she's like,
I actually won really big this time.
oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So like that's really interesting to have that that conviction so early on, Brookelyn. I'm sure that really helped kind of move you through this. For you, Hunter, hearing this, of course, she was up front with it at the very beginning. Maybe you had some misunderstandings of like how on the table this thing was.
Yes.
But like, what changed your mind besides like, I know that your wife really wanted to, but you could have drug your feet and said, absolutely not. Blah, 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 blah. Like, what moved the needle for you?
I think I did drag my feet, actually. I drug my feet a couple of different ways. One of the questions we were thinking through is like, okay, do we have children, try to have children first, or do we adopt? Okay, because a lot of people, they make the decision based on like, okay, we couldn't have kids, so now we adopt. That wasn't really kind of our way of going into it. Is like, okay, we're going to adopt. It's just like, what order are we adopting in, or trying, or whatever. And so that was part of the first question that we kind of worked through and kind of thinking through this. And I'll let Brookelyn probably say more about that and kind of how we kind of came to our conclusion. So I kind of used that as a negotiation to kind of delay for a little while. And then
Is that called a filibuster? Or
yes, basically. And then I was like, okay, but now what about the financial implications or whatever? And so then like, man, all the doors open there. And so it's like, well, I mean, I guess I'm just running out of excuses. And when it finally came through, I mean, obviously I have no regrets. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I highly
They're
recommend
pretty
it.
good buddies.
Yeah,
He's
my
right
friend now. I mean, we're pretty tight. So we're as tight. Was it tight as two thieves? I guess, as they say. And so, especially when we're stealing cookies and Mom doesn't know.
So sweet.
Anyway, but I don't know if y'all want to kind of follow up on that.
Yeah, Brookelyn, talk about that distinction. For a lot of people, like you said, they make the decision to adopt because they can't have children. They have fertility issues, and it's still admirable. But I think there is something unique about your story that you wanted to adopt, whether or not, fertility was a question. You just wanted to adopt. How did you decide what order to go in?
Well, I think life kind of unfolded in a way where it just made sense to me. I say life unfolded in a way. I think God ordered our steps in a way where it made sense. And I was telling Hunter the other day, even as recent as last week, I started thinking back through just how my life has unfolded. And I realized how what I thought was just life happening actually ended up being steps that God was ordering. And so when we got married, I had several goals that I wanted to meet before we became parents. And one of those was I at least wanted to finish my bachelor's degree. And I reached the point where I was nearing the completion of my degree. And at this point, I'd still looked into international adoption, but I didn't know anyone personally who had done it. And so I didn't know where to begin, what steps to take. And I had already been thinking, okay, I'm going to be completing my degree in so many months. And so after this, how do we want to approach starting a family? And I just happened to see someone that I was connected to had posted something on Instagram of all things that they were headed to Thailand to bring their child home. So I reached out to them and just said, hey, how do you start the process? And they came back with so much information of exactly how to get started. So at that point, I just started looking up different agencies and what programs were available. And when I realized, okay, there's an absolute way forward, then I went to him and said, okay, college is going to be over in this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
If we went ahead and started the process of all of the paperwork, the application process, the dossier process now, then about the time I'm finishing college, we would be going to bring our child home if we started the adoption process now.
And how long was that anticipated timeline?
Okay. So this is where what was anticipated versus what became reality is
Yes.
different.
Okay.
God was in all in the middle of it. So different agencies, you have some very well-known larger agencies, and they were giving us, depending on the country, there was a timeline of 2 to 4 years. So we
Wow.
looked into the Philippines. It was going to be about 3 to 4 years. China was about 2 to 4, and Korea was about 2 to 3, with these larger agencies. Okay. Well, then I started noticing there were some smaller agencies that still had some of the same programs. But when I talked to them, one of the caseworkers said, okay, so a lot of people think you have to go with a larger agency to get the best experience in the program. She said, the reality is we can't set the program. We all have to follow the country guidelines. So you're going to have the exact same experience from us, but because everyone goes with them, we have a shorter time frame because we don't have as many waiting families.
Okay.
And so she said, you could expect to bring a child home anywhere from 9 to 15 months from now.
Whoa.
And
And I'm
so
like, wait a second.
that was,
3 or
yeah.
4 years to like 9 to 12. I was like, oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
And so when we started working through the process of, this is kind of jumping ahead into another part of the story, but when we started working through the process of choosing a country, each country had its own criteria you had to meet. And so we met all the criteria for the Philippines. Ironically enough, they only adopt Christians. So if
Wow.
there are Christian families out there who want to adopt, the Philippines still has a program, and they only adopt Christian families.
Just this particular program or the entire
Country.
Philippine? Oh, whoa. That's cool.
And then when we looked at China, China had a criteria of to apply, we both had to be 30. I was 28 at the time.
Okay.
So when we came across Korea, of all things, I ironically didn't know much about Korea, to be honest. I always
Mhm.
thought China or Japan, but Japan had shut their program down by that point. So all of a sudden I started trying to figure, okay, what is the country of Korea like? What is the culture like? And when she started describing the program to me, it seemed like a beautiful fit for us. We met every criteria, and it seemed like it fit. It resonated with us.
Wow.
And so that's when we started narrowing down kind of how we narrowed down which country to adopt from.
Mm-hmm.
Was just kind of process of elimination, but ultimately it just fit.
Wow.
Wow.
And was that timeline similar to what you said earlier, 9 to 15 months?
No.
Of what became reality, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, like, or what was said to you about the timeline for
Korea was the
Korea?
9 to 15 months.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we
a lot of
started.
things happened that kind of delayed the process.
Yeah. We started the process in March of 21 is when we
Mhm.
submitted our initial applications. And then you have to complete a home study. And then once your home study is completed, you also are completing a dossier packet to send to the country, which is basically every detail of your entire life sent to them so they can match a child to you.
Wow.
And so you have no secrets by the end of this process. You go through multiple
What are
background
some
checks and
things that
fingerprinting.
surprised you that you didn't realize they wanted?
Well, you do have to go through FBI fingerprinting and background checks.
Mhm.
Multiple times.
You have to submit marriage license, birth certificates, all original copies. You have to go dig
all
everything
your
about your life.
financials.
Your financials, yeah, you have to do a breakdown of your financials. They tour your home. You write every detail of your home. You have to write every detail of your life story. So what your childhood was like, and what your marriage is like, and what your parents are like, and what your
Yep.
siblings are like. By the time it was finished, we both had about 7 to 14 pages written on each of us individually.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So
And
you
so
got
you-
to know yourselves better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely,
And it
sure.
wasn't the process. It's not that it doesn't come across invasive.
No.
And so I don't want people to get scared about
No.
it from that standpoint. It is a process and there's a lot to it and you have to be committed to the process. But ultimately they're trying to basically verify that you're the type of person that is going to basically have every advantage to, or give this child every advantage in life to have a good life. That doesn't mean that you have to be wealthy.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to have a perfect background. Sometimes not having a perfect background and that you all together are working towards having a healthier marriage and home and stuff like that. Sometimes that's factored in as well. And so,
Yeah.
so you don't have to have a, perfect record, quote unquote.
Right.
If you have a speeding ticket, that's probably fine. Now, I don't know what is the disqualifiers there. I'm sure there are some, there are a few, but it's not, you don't have to be afraid to start the process, if that
No.
makes sense.
How
No, they're
much money does
basically-
it cost?
Oh, okay. So that's a really great question.
Because I know a lot of people worry about that.
Yeah.
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 So
Well,
once
before we do, but the process ended up taking about 3 years
yeah, it did.
ultimately.
It took
before we
3
got him.
years. We actually we started March 21 and we traveled to Korea to bring him home March of 2024.
Wow.
So it's interesting. Before he was
Yeah.
even born, we started the process.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
anyways, there's more
There's
details
more
on
to that we can get into.
But
Yeah.
but as far as the cost, okay, so they projected it to be between what $40,000 and $50,000.
Yeah,
for
near
the cost.
50. They
Close
say
to
to
plan for
expect around
50.
50,000.
That includes like flights there and back. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all the agency fees. That's the home study fees. Just background checks. We had our background check done. We joke about this all the time. Like we have such a clean record, and we know it because literally we've had it done 4, 5, 6 times.
Yeah, well, the process took long enough that we ended up having to do a home study renewal. So then we had to do all of that all over again.
So, but and so every 6 to 12 months we're going in and get fingerprinted again,
Yeah.
and get our background check done
Wow.
again, and we're like we're still clean, we promise. So, but
Or you
anyway,
could feel
but
very confident about your alternate
Yeah.
identity.
my record is fully verifiable. I've got multiple records to prove it. So, but anyway, but they said it was going to take about $50,000, and so, for me, I was like, oh man, like that's like we were doing well in life, but I mean, even if you're doing well, an extra 50 grand to just go, spend on this, is that's a lot.
That is
for anybody.
significant.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I was worried about is because we do have a pretty decent income, but we didn't necessarily have an extra 50K just laying around to do this with. I was like,
You
well, are
don't?
we going to, well,
Surprise.
especially back then, it was different. We were paying for her college, we were cash flowing things, we were, all the different things. And so it's like, that's a big expense to tack on to everything else we're doing.
Sure it is.
And so one of the things we did is we looked into, I was like, all right, you got to find a way to pay for this. And she looked into adoption grants. And so we actually ended up getting, I think, around 20,000.
We got 20,000 between two separate adoption foundations.
Wow.
Yes. And so that was a huge blessing in the process. Plus, we ended up, because of the foreign adoption tax credit, domestic adoption is a little different. We ended up getting I think it was around a $16,000 tax credit, not a tax deduction, tax credit. So it's like basically giving you that money.
We're
So
getting about 36,000 overall.
ultimately, net, it wasn't quite that bad. But I remember we talked to someone from Show Hope, which is one of the foundations that gave us.
Show Hope is the foundation started by Stephen Curtis Chapman and his family. They also adopted 3 children internationally, so they now have a grant foundation.
That's so
And so
cool.
my wife's like, you got to talk to these people. And so I remember there was a lady we talked to there, and she basically kind of stepped me through the process. And she was like, hey, look, she was an older lady, almost like like I would think of her like as my grandma now, it's like, she was kind of, she's so precious. And she was kind of stepping us through it. And she basically kind of just calmed all my fears. And she's like, hey, look, people like us are out here to help support you guys. You guys are some of the perfect candidates for this. So don't let the finances hold you back from being able to take this forward, to move this forward, because there are kids that need to be placed with people just like you guys. And so I was like, okay, it's bigger than us.
Wow.
That's so good.
And I love how you said that, though. It's bigger than you.
Yeah,
It really is. Like,
that
I
is.
think when I would think about that, I'd go, oh my goodness, 50,000? Maybe
Yeah.
the next decade, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe
kinda
not,
what
but
I said, yeah.
serious. But like, just to hear that, God has really helped you, provided,
Yeah.
and now you have a kid.
Yes.
What was really neat about the grant process was we were putting back money for the adoption from the time we decided to go for it. We just started putting back extra that we had. And we had a missionary come through, and we both felt like we were supposed to give money to this missionary. And we looked at each other and we were like, the only place we can take it from right now is the adoption fund that we started. And so we were in service one night, and independently, we both felt like if we went ahead and gave, we would reap the benefits through the adoption process.
This is before we had any grants
Yeah.
at that point.
And at that point, we have been told Show Hope gave around, you could expect like $6,000 to $8,000 in a grant typically.
Okay.
Well, we felt to give 10,000 to this missionary, which was a big hit out of a 50.
Well, part of the story is too, our
Yeah.
process had been delayed
Yeah.
at this
Mhm.
point.
That's true.
And so we're like, okay, we don't even know if we're going to get a kid at this point. And if we do, it's going to be delayed. And so like, this is going to have to be a God thing.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, look, this is what we have, or a portion of what we had saved up. And it was like, it's not enough. Because sometimes in life, especially in the kingdom of God, what you have is not enough. And so sometimes you have to put seed in the ground and see what happens. I'm not necessarily recommend that for everybody to do that, but in our case, we ended up giving that amount, and the missions actually was going to help children in other parts of the world. So we're like, hey, one way or the other, it's going to help. So, but once we did that, we ended up getting more than double the amount in grants.
Yeah. We ended up getting 10,000 from both.
From both.
Foundation.
That's
we weren't
incredible.
expecting that.
Yeah.
We were expecting collective. We didn't even know about the other one at that point, I don't
Yeah.
think.
No, we
But
didn't.
we were thinking we would maybe get 5,000 or 6,000, but we ended up with over 20,000 in grants.
That's amazing. I love
At
So-
the
that.
right time too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If couples are sitting here going, we would do it if,
Mhm.
Yes,
like we would do it if all this was taken care of.
Yeah.
that was me.
Yeah. What if the money issue was completely taken off the table for you?
Mhm.
Sure.
How does that change the game?
Right.
I think that's a good question to ask.
That's
Yeah.
basically what the lady helped me walk through. She's
Yeah.
like, if this goes away, is this what you want to do? And I was like, yes, absolutely. We're committed to this.
My wife is making me do it. I'm joking.
Like, I have to at this point. So.
There are other foundations as well.
Mhm.
We
Okay.
only pulled from 2. But there are others. Some are income based, and we didn't qualify for some of them. But there are others that we didn't even tap into. So there are definitely options out there for sure.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Brooklyn, what doubts through the process did you have?
Oh, well, I was for the most part, settled in my spirit about it because I knew I had held on to it for so long. However, there did come times where I wondered if God was going to redirect us because it was taking so long. So basically what happened is in the last week of June of 21, our agency went to send our dossier to Korea. And Korea announced some changes to their adoption process. So they contacted us and asked if we still wanted to send everything because they didn't know what the changes would be and how much it would delay us. And so we just said, let's go ahead and send it, and it'll basically put us in line. And if it takes a long time and we choose to go with another option, then we can just revoke our dossier, but let's go ahead and get in line. And I chose the approach of send everything, get in line, and live my life. I chose not to obsess over it. And so we traveled the world. I finished my degree. I picked up another job that I was super passionate about. And I started trying to do as much as I could with my time in that season instead of thinking about it every day. And I can honestly say there were several weeks I never thought about it. I would
Wow.
just,
Which weirds people out because most
Yeah.
people just hyper obsess over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
and so I just kept reaching for the sky. And then we did have in the process, people started finding out that we were adopting. We didn't really make it a secret. We just kind of talked about it, but we couldn't tell anyone when it would happen.
Mm.
And all of a sudden we started having private adoptions being brought to our attention, like out of the blue.
Wow.
And at first, we started passing them on to friends that we knew wanted to adopt because they couldn't have children. And we would just kind of redirect to them. But then finally, I stopped one time and I said, Hunter, what if God keeps bringing these options because he's trying to redirect us? And at this point, we had been waiting probably 2 years or more.
Wow.
And so we started pursuing the one that was right in front of us. And at that point, we got down to, we were 45 minutes away from meeting this baby who was 3 months old at our attorney's office. And the family backed out.
Okay.
And so we just stayed in the process. And now I look back and, my doubts were probably centered around like, is this actually going to happen or is it not?
Not
I
if
never-
you should do it, but it was
Right. It was like,
How
is it going
is
to
this?
happen and how? I was going to adopt either way, but whether God was going to redirect us to a local private one or keep us where we were internationally, that's what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still sure that I was going to adopt.
Yeah.
And then we reached a point where we really didn't know what to do, honestly. We were just waiting. And we were realizing that when Korea had been matching like upwards of 30 families a year, and this one particular year they matched 8. And they had stopped accepting new applications. So there was just so many unknowns.
A lot of defeating news.
Yeah, a lot of defeating news. But we were just waiting and still just living life. And so after the private one fell through, we just continued to wait. Now I look back and I realize what seemed like a delay in the process was probably a divine pause. Because had we been matched in that 9 to 15 months, Winston wasn't born yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so God knew exactly what he was doing.
I love that. And that just speaks, Brooklyn, like what you said, just drawing that line from what you said earlier, is that I wasn't obsessing about it. I had in my spirit, my spirit was settled, you said. And so if that's true, you know that God has this, then you don't really have to push it or force it or anything. God is working it out.
Yeah.
And that can let your spirit be settled. I think that's a really powerful message for all of us in everything, but especially with all the people that are trying to have kids with infertility or adoption. Like, that's stressful.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it really can be. And I can only imagine if someone isn't able to have children, I can imagine there's so much more they're even having to face internally than I had to.
Sure.
This was a choice I made from a burden and a passion.
Yeah.
I can imagine if I was in their shoes and not knowing what the timeline was, it would have been very emotional and challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you step back and just say, do I really believe that my life is in the hands of God and the timing of my life is in the hands of God?
Sometimes, especially as Christians, sometimes when we're navigating things like this, there's like this back and forth of like, is God wanting me to, I need to appear desperate. You know what I mean? Like, so my desperation, crying out to God, but then there's also this element of like putting it in God's hands. And sometimes the tension between the two, it's hard to find a balance of just taking one step at a time, showing God you're serious. This is something we're invested in, but also there's a balance of faith where you're walking by faith, not by sight. And so there's that process doesn't have to look frazzled and anxious and worried in our human nature. And I'll be honest, on the financial side, that was me. I was frazzled, anxious, and worried the whole time until it all came together. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But the thing is, she still laughs at me all the time because, like, even today, it's like I'm getting a little bit better, but like God just opens up big opportunities and new things, from the adoption, financially, business, different things like that. But we've identified like the season of change. There's always certain things that happen. Even like the divine pause, that you said, there's certain elements we're identifying recurring themes, and I like just totally freak out, every time. And she's just like rock solid, it's like we're like opposites of what you would imagine probably. But we help stabilize each other through those times. And but what we've ultimately what we've both come to realize is that stepping out in faith, you assume it's a God thing. If we were going to get a child, we wanted it to be a God thing, not something we forced.
Right.
I think that was a big thing for us. We weren't trying to come across in such a point of desperation that we want a kid, we want a family, that we're willing to supersede God's perfect will, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so, but I think giving that over to Him and letting God unfold it all. I'm telling you, we've had, in my opinion, I don't know how we could have had a better experience.
No, that's really true. That's really true.
You talked about stabilizing each other through different seasons. Talk more about the impact of adoption on marriage. We've done assessments for couples who are wanting to adopt, and some of the prerequisites for adoption sometimes is that you have to have a marriage assessment or go to marriage counseling or get some sort of approval from a counselor. So talk about why that's the case. How does it impact marriage?
Okay, so we had to have a psychological evaluation by a PhD. It was very specific, like what the criteria that he had to fit to actually do our evaluation. And that was where we learned a whole lot about ourselves.
Yes.
That was at the very beginning of the process. Wow.
Hunter stumped him.
I forgot about that. They're like, what's going on with this guy?
Wow. Okay, so I would say becoming a parent in general is going to impact your marriage.
Well, I would say it probably is different whether you already have kids and you're adopting versus if this is your first.
That's very true.
That changes the dynamic.
Yeah, we were
entirely.
becoming first-time parents.
So there was a lot of elements for us that we were adopting and we were becoming parents. So we went from 8 or 9 years of marriage of not having a child to having a toddler. That's a big jump. Whereas some people
without a pregnancy.
Yes, exactly. So it was there was elements of that, but continue with your thoughts were on the kind of the process.
Yeah. So we did go from no children to a toddler who was not only having to work through the trauma of his entire world being turned upside down, but was also entering twos.
Yes.
So we had to really remind ourselves everything he was going through. But I remember another adoptive mother who had adopted from Korea told me, she said, just be prepared. The first 6 months you are in survival mode. And then after that, you can live. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. We're just going to bring him home and we're going to incorporate him into our world and keep living life. And at the end of 6 months, I looked at Hunter and said, we just survived a tornado.
It was a wonderful, beautiful tornado. But man, it was a tornado.
So we were very blessed in the fact some of the children who are adopted in the process that he was adopted in have some very intense trauma they work through. We were super blessed with the fact that Winston had been raised in a very stable, very loving foster home. And his foster mom is still a part of our world today. And so she gave him a good foundation. He had a lot of love, care, affection. And so the transition was difficult for him. And we did have some moments where we had to really help him through emotions and some trauma. But it wasn't as bad as some people do have to walk through. So what we found is working through that, we had to try to keep ourselves balanced for him, but also we were having to work through the change that it was bringing to us.
Right.
And I realized for myself, I didn't realize that I was as much of a sensory person as I am. Oh my goodness. The overstimulation for me, this is where he's super even and I have to go off and really have time to process. And when I am feeling mommed out and touched out, and Winston couldn't help what he was dealing with because he was working through some trauma moments. And those are very, very challenging. Then Hunter would have to step in and then we would have to talk through it a lot later. And I'll be the first to say we probably did not do as good as we would have liked to, but we made it through. And I think where we're at now is really healthy. It was one of those things you just have to learn by trying.
Yeah.
Sure.
Looking back, hindsight's 2020.
Don't we all have rosy glasses of what we
Yeah.
will do in hard situations,
Mhm.
right? Like
You don't know till you're there.
you don't.
And then you're there and you're like, what do I actually do right now? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that was interesting for me, and I think maybe for you too, one thing we like questioned is because we hadn't had kids up to this point,
Mhm.
is like all the parental instincts
Yeah.
and feelings is like, is that going to just be natural, or is that gonna? Are we going to learn that? Are we going to miss that? You know,
Yeah.
because like and that was just because we had never experienced it before. But I am telling you, it's 100% real.
Yeah.
It 100% all kicks in. I mean, from day one.
I had someone tell me they didn't know if it would. I don't know
Wow.
if I ever told you the story. I may have. I don't remember. But I was at church one night and one of my friends came up and they were talking about they had just had another child. And they said, I don't know if this will be true for you with adoption because I don't know if it's the same with adoption. But when you give birth to a child, there's just something about you giving birth and that child coming from you. It's just like, something kicks in your mind and your heart as a mother. And in that moment, I looked at them and I was like, I'm okay, but don't go say that to, and I named some friends who are unable to have children and they became parents through adoption because I said, they're as much a mother as any of the rest of us.
Mm.
But in the back of my mind, it made me start wondering, will those natural motherly instincts kick in? Will I have the natural intuition? And I remember 3 days after we got custody of him, I put him to bed one night and I looked at Hunter and I just burst into tears and I was like, I actually know what his cries are all about now and I actually know what he needs and it's there. It just like clicked in my brain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
sweet.
it was like something definitely turned on inside of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was something I think we both worried about a little bit. And like, you were through the adoption process and they even prep you for this because not everyone has a perfect story. And so
Yeah.
bonding can be more challenging for some people than others. We were very blessed.
We have been so blessed.
Abundantly. But, we talked to someone the other day who had been adopted, from, I mean, he's considered not like old, but like considerably older than us. And so we're like, well, tell us a little bit about your story. He opened up about it. He was very curious about Winston and everything. And basically he assured us, he said, like, you will be mom and dad. He said,
Yeah.
and kind of explained some of his story and stuff. And it was like, that was so reassuring. And it's amazing how many people adoption touches. I was talking on
Yeah.
the phone with a business person the other day that I've known for over a decade, a business mentor and person in my life that I look up to. And he said, oh, by the way, my wife was adopted. I don't know if I told you
You
that.
did,
And
yeah.
so it's like, you don't realize how many people it touches until you go through the process, but it becomes an open door to talk to other people.
Yeah.
And it's a valuable thing. I feel like it's something that we cherish, our experience and the
Yeah.
process and
Yeah.
everything.
Can we go back and touch? May have another question, but before we're finished, I want to touch a little bit more of the timeline and how God unfolded getting
Yeah.
Winston. April of 2023. We just had this gut feeling we were about to get our referral. We knew we were next in line, and we were actually in the country of Lebanon for a friend's wedding, and a referral came through for us. And our agency contacted us and said, I'm very hesitant to send this referral to you because it is so much of this referral is things that you indicated you were uncomfortable accepting when you filled out your checklist. And that was where our faith got really
This was
tested.
hard. This was hard.
Because you actually have to go through like a 5-page checklist of things you're comfortable accepting and not accepting based on your capabilities.
Like, what are some examples of those things?
So like medical issues, mental
Okay.
issues,
Background,
family
situations.
background, you have to indicate things you're comfortable working with.
Mm.
And so then they take that and they match a referral to you.
Okay.
And so there was so much about it that was everything we thought we wanted. But there was so much more about it that we looked at each other and we were like, this is what we said we were not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've waited for 2 years at this point, so there's something inside of you that just wants to say yes. Like, how can you tell a child no?
Yeah, that's very difficult.
And we had to have some friends sit down with us and talk us through it logically. And we had to send an email to decline that referral. And that was the hardest part of this process because our friends ultimately looked at us and they said, either you trust God or you don't. And God knew what you desired and God knew what you were capable of and comfortable with. And so when we declined the referral, our social worker said, our caseworker said, thank you for being honest with yourself and with me. I don't know when you'll get another referral. You'll hear from me when you do. And that was it. So that
We
was,
didn't know, like, did we just get booted from the system?
Right.
Yeah,
Or, like,
was that a slap on the wrist or what?
and so that was in April. And then we didn't hear anything and didn't hear anything. And in June, a friend that was in line behind us got their referral. And so at this point, I actually had an appointment scheduled to discuss other options because we didn't know at that point, like, is this even going to go through? So I had an appointment scheduled to sit down with someone and discuss some other options. And on Saturday, the appointment was on Monday. On Saturday, I looked at Hunter and I said, I don't feel right about this appointment. There was nothing wrong with the appointment itself, but I was like, I just don't feel right about going through with it. So I just texted and was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to fulfill my appointment on Monday. And on Sunday morning, I was helping with our Spanish service. And there's this sweet, sweet lady in our Spanish church who speaks no English. So she did not know our story. I couldn't tell her the story because I don't know Spanish. And she went to the Spanish pastor after service and she said, Pastor, I don't know how to explain this, but while she was up there singing this morning, I saw a baby boy sitting at her feet. And he just said, well, Sister Maria, I believe you're prophesying it into existence. You keep praying for them. The next day was the day I was supposed to go to the appointment. And Monday, 1 week later, we got Winston's referral. And it was everything and more than what we thought we were going to get. And in so many ways.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So yes, there were definitely moments of questioning and wondering, but in those moments you have to lean into what you asked God for and lean into trusting God because your emotions can do crazy things to you.
very much so.
They really can. And so you have to fully trust God with it. Yeah.
For sure. My goodness. I love hearing those God moments, in the timeline, because time is such, we think of it in such a linear way, chronos, but God's time, kairos, like he just can jump in and do whatever, whenever.
Yes.
And I love seeing that you guys waited in your linear way until God did what he was going to do. Yeah. And now you have little Winston.
Now we
Yes,
Winston.
and he's perfect. We love him.
Well, he's perfect for us. He's still a little human.
He's still a human.
Exactly.
He's wonderful though.
And he's almost 3.
I didn't say
3 next
perfectly
month,
behaved.
yes.
I said he's
Yeah,
perfect.
exactly.
Yes,
So
he'll be 3 in a month.
We love him.
He'll be 3. What are you guys thinking now in terms of are you thinking that you guys will intentionally try to have biological children? Are you thinking that you'll adopt another child? What's next for you guys?
That's the $1 million question.
Hopefully it's only still 50,000, not $1 million. Don't stress me out at this point. How many adoptions are we planning?
We would love to adopt from Korea again, but Korea, their process has really changed, and so they're not
Across
accepting
the world. A lot of
applications.
people don't realize this, but there's actually a birth crisis
Yes.
going on, and we don't really feel it in the United States as much. But in Europe and in a lot of Asian countries, they're below replacement. I think replacement's like 2.1, 2.2 women, children per productive woman or something like that. There's like some statistic. Like South Korea was like what 0.76.
Yeah, it was really low.
Okay.
And so they've
Wow.
basically shut their program down or slowed it way down. China has
They've shut theirs
pulled a
down.
lot of theirs back. And then across the board in a lot of Asian countries, unfortunately, a lot of things have changed. It's not that someone shouldn't pursue it or something like that, because it's changing moment by moment right now. It's very
Sure.
unknown kind of what the future of it is. And so there's a lot of moving targets on that right now. And so that plays a factor. So we've kind of tried to figure out, okay, if we adopt next, where from, and like
Yeah.
what does that process look
Okay.
like?
Or have biological
Or have
children. But we
biological
would
children.
Yeah.
totally
We're probably
100%
open
be
either way,
open
yeah.
to adopting again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we would do domestic or international.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's
Okay.
it is there are no words that can explain the feeling of knowing that a year and a half ago this child didn't know the word Jesus, but then taking him up to the church to pray with you in the middle of the day and having him crawl on your lap when he feels the presence of God and crawl on your back and lay there and respond to it. And knowing that, well, and the other day it was during the altar portion of service. He saw someone kneeling at the altar and he grabbed Hunter's hand and took him over there and told Hunter to pray for him. And we started seeing, even in moments when he feels the presence of God, now he starts to cry and he doesn't know what he's responding to. And so when you have that experience and you realize, had he not had this opportunity, he wouldn't be experiencing this. I would do this all over again. I would do it over and over.
And a lot of times people, when they have conversations about adoption, it's focused around, in some regards, to the child and stuff like that, and giving, being able to provide a life for him. And that's a big part of what we want to do. I mean, as a parent, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I cannot fully articulate the benefits to the parents as well.
Yeah.
And it shows, and the adoption process, I think, shows us, I mean, parenting in general shows us a little bit more about how God loves us. And I think adoption may just bring a little bit more shine to that.
Yeah.
In some ways. There's certain aspects.
For
And
sure.
through the challenges, through the good things, it's a wonderful process. It has been for us. And becoming a dad, being an adoptive father, I have no regrets.
Yeah. So we're open either way kind of right now.
Yeah.
We've still just been settling into figuring out what life is like with
Yeah.
a child.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
How to what extent does your age play a role in the timeline decision for you guys?
I do think about it. I'm about to be 33. Am I about to be 33? I think I'm about to be
Yes.
33.
You start to forget and stop counting after a while.
Yeah, after a while,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
I do think about it, but I don't. Maybe I'm taking the wrong approach. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I don't let that make me feel a sense of panic or urgency.
Yeah. Well, you've had to trust God so much that
Yes.
you're still in
Yeah.
that vein of just like, all right, Lord, whenever your timing is right.
Yeah, and at this point, we haven't really felt like a release either way. But also, Winston has needed this time to settle into
Yes.
his home, his new family and home.
100%.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
but yeah, we would be totally open to adopting again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, maybe in the next few years, we'll have to do a follow up and see what happened.
Yeah,
We
for
we
sure.
will see.
Rest
Well,
of the story.
You've probably opened up a lot of questions for people
Yeah.
Mhm.
in this podcast, especially those who are thinking about it or have thought about it, but
Mhm.
don't know what next step to take.
Yeah.
Could you give people like maybe some places to look just to start to
Sure.
become educated, and what advice you give them if they wanted to pursue this a little bit further?
For sure. I'll also say this. Any of your listeners who want to reach out to me, you're welcome to share my social media. I've
Aw,
actually helped
great.
multiple families since this process started.
Well, that's awesome. We'll
It
definitely
becomes a
put that in
network.
the show notes.
Yeah.
It
I'm
becomes a
happy.
network of people.
Yeah,
They
I'm
have,
really
bet.
happy to have conversations and point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
So the first the first thing to determine is, are you thinking international or domestic? That makes a
Mhm.
difference on your agency. Some agencies only do domestic, some do both, and some primarily focus on international. And so you really need to figure out which you're looking at and start researching agencies that are in your region, because a lot of them work regionally, especially if you're going domestic. If you're going domestic, you've got to have a regional agency. And so really researching your agencies, and then depending on the agency you go with, they may or may not actually provide your home study services. So you may also need an additional home study agency that's local to your region. And then for funding, um, you can Google like adoption grant foundations, adoption funding options. There's other things you can do, like there's this other fundraiser that we connected with the founder on. It was called, I think, Both Hands, I think is what it's
I
called.
think so, yeah.
And basically they do a project where they believe in helping widows and orphans at the same time. And so you find a local widow or widower who needs a project done at their house. You pull together physical
Volunteers.
resources, volunteers, and you go to local hardware stores and they can provide all of the supplies for free. And you'll be able to give them tax forms and everything where they reap the benefits of it. And then you help bring together your volunteers to do this project for this widow or widower. And then this foundation will basically like match the level of that project with funding towards your adoption.
So people can
That's so
basically
cool.
donate to basically sponsor the
Yeah.
project, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
then you're going and getting a group of volunteers, you're basically collecting resources, getting commitments, stuff like that. And you go do almost like a Habitat for
Yeah.
Humanity type project
Mhm.
or something like
Yeah.
that, where you're going to like go do this special project. And then people who either can contribute through either helping physically, donating material, or by financially contributing. And then the foundation kind of matches whatever you raise on that. And some people can get most, if not all of their adoption funded
Yeah.
in like just 1 to 3 projects.
Cool. What's the name of that foundation?
I think it's called Both
I think
Hands.
it's Both Hands.
I'm pretty sure it's
Okay.
Both Hands.
They're in like Nashville, Tennessee area.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's
That
awesome.
is so cool.
There's also things you can do like
But that's just one example.
that's
I mean,
just one
there's
example.
Right.
a bunch
Yeah.
out there.
Like the company Bonfire, you can like create sweatshirts and t-shirts, and they have
Yeah.
a whole program set up where you can actually set the pricing of your shirts, and you can, if people buy your shirts, you get a percentage of the profits towards your adoption process.
So adoption
So,
merch. I mean,
yeah,
like, we're in the
That's really
21st century,
cool.
folks.
Yeah.
You know, and, like,
We created one, but we just had all of the proceeds go back to Show Hope to help fund other people's adoptions.
Cool.
So there's a lot of options out there.
I love that.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll say
Okay.
this too. Whenever people are in the adoption process, sometimes statements can be made if people don't understand adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of disconnect a little bit from it, like, you know, and understand one day it will all make sense, or it may not make sense to some people.
Yeah.
But sometimes people can make statements like a statement was made to me, why would I go buy a baby when I can have one?
ooh. That was tough.
And I looked at the person and I said, I'm not buying a child. I'm paying legal government fees and I'm reaping the benefits of bringing a child into my life.
We're paying for the privilege.
And so
of
we're
a
not paying,
placement.
this $50,000 we're throwing around is not paying for a child. It's paying agencies and government.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the baby's just a beautiful benefit.
It's
that
like you
comes
don't pay
from
the
it.
hospital to have your own baby. Like you didn't buy a baby.
Right. Right.
It's just people are uneducated about it.
And so if someone's in the process, just understand some people don't understand. And there's a group who does, and you have a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
There's, as I was saying
Wow.
earlier, there's a whole network.
Yeah.
Once you tap into the network, there are people that will help you.
Yeah.
And I remember even for the Korean adoption, there was like a whole, like, I mean, it was, I likened it to like a spy network. Like they knew how to like translate all the like court documents and like
Aw.
everything. Like they were tracking everything. Like these people, these adoptive moms, like do not underestimate their abilities. I
You
mean,
just
they
had
could
to know
be-
the right Facebook group to get into.
Yeah, but these
Aw.
would be CIA recruits. I mean, you know, I mean, like they were intense. Like they will help you get all the answers you need. Like
That's
there's a
great.
support group out there.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you guys for helping normalize this process and talk
Yeah.
through the joys of bringing a life into your home
Mm-hmm.
and really, I don't know, like it's saving a soul in some ways. It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
giving them and providing them a beautiful family while they give you joy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
biblical.
It is so biblical. That's what is mind-boggling with those comments. Thank you guys so much for this.
Yes.
This is very enlightening to hear.
For sure. All right, guys, we're going to close out the episode the way we close out all of our episodes. And that's by asking you this question. Rewind back to the beginning of your marriage. You can put it in the context of adoption or not. But what advice do you wish you would have received? And then fill in the blank. Dear young married couple.
Dear young married couple, do not be afraid to take on grand adventures in life, in adoption, in your family, in business, finance. Don't let fear hold you back.
Oh, I'm going to say ditto because he basically said exactly what I was going to say.
I said it first because
Mega dittos.
Don't be afraid to take a risk.
That's great.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you so much, you guys.
We love
You
y'all.
guys are awesome. We respect you.
You guys.
Absolutely. Love
Thank you guys.